Welcome in. Good afternoon, Michigan football. Here on the Maize and Blue Review. Show where we talk about Michigan football. It's been a rough week. There's no getting around that. Today, we look for that inspiration to find Michigan in the winner's circle tomorrow. It's one of those tricky things. We all watch football, and we know you don't want to be, totally base everything you saw off of last week. And it's not a week-to-week type game. But also, it's tough to get away from that when your memory is what you saw the last time. Although, if you can shift for this one, knowing that it is in Ann Arbor, I think that is going to help you along. Look, I'm not going to sit here all day long, afternoon long today, and, boo-hoo, crying, kind of like I did on Wednesday. It's time to, look forward to the weekend. I'm reminded, and I'll remind you, we'll get into June, and there won't be much to watch. People say, oh, it's going to be such a rough summer. I can't wait till Michigan football. And there'll be countdowns, and we'll talk so much about, this could happen and that's going to happen. And generally, of course, you're talking about it with, the high ceiling in mind, and here we sit. Maybe this is the low point. Hopefully this is the low point of the season as we sit here. I'm trying to talk myself into some things, see how it was going good. And then I don't know. So it's not just football. We've got basketball that starts tonight. Michigan in action at the Chrysler Center, taking on Cincinnati, Wes Miller's team at 6:00. I'll give you some thoughts on the season debut of this new look Maize and Blue hoop squad. I'll give you the prediction that I have for the Michigan game tomorrow, and that's where we're going to start. Is this Michigan game tomorrow? Michigan, it said 6.5. I saw that. It's 5.5 where it sits right now, and you have Washington. Yeah, Washington is a team that has a dual threat quarterback. They got a running back that did a good job and scored a touchdown against Michigan last year out in Seattle. And they have a defense that Michigan should be able to move the ball on. As I take a look at it and you say, well, how are they going to win? What's it going to come down to? Those are all real important questions. How much do you get when you're just sitting around looking at some of the numbers? You've got Michigan's offense needs to be, they really have to improve in the second half, almost 50th in yards per game. You're trying to get into the top 25 when it comes to your rankings, and not all of them are going to be that way. But, you look at scoring points per game under 30, 59th, that's not going to cut it. Even on a defense, yards, 35th in FBS. You can throw on Michigan. Here you go. They've been pretty good against the run, 20th, but scoring defense 30th. That needs to improve a little bit. The defense obviously didn't have the greatest game a week ago. And here's that Husky offense talked about, 17th in the country, 400 and almost 69 yards per game. They are a team that's going to throw it a little bit more than run it. At least they've been better that way, and they're a top 20 team, almost scoring 40 points per game. Here's the defense. This is where you can throw on them. 86th in the country. If you're looking at the stats, more difficult to run against them. We've had this. We've seen it, with a couple teams talking about, how good they are against the run. And we'll get to where Michigan is in terms of their health. I don't know what you take away from those stats. I take away from those stats is that it's Sharon Moore said that Justice Haynes is questionable earlier in the week. It sounds like he hasn't practiced at all. Whatever, he's got maybe bruised ribs. That's just a guess from me. Who knows what it is there? I didn't like Sharon. He shouldn't say things like he did last Saturday, like, "Oh, he could have gone back in." Well, no, and so then he didn't practice all week. Could he have really gone back in? I mean, I don't know. That's just a little nitpick for me. I don't know what benefit it has saying he could have they could have gone back in. He wanted to go back in. I believe that. But, if he plays tomorrow, then, Sharon, maybe, just being honest. Maybe he was being too honest there about him, that he could have gone back in. He probably should have gone back in if he could have gone back in. If he was medically cleared to go back in last week, he should have gone back in. But, saying, well, we want to, they say play it safe with our student athletes. Put it to the medical team. If he's cleared medically, put him back in. If he's not, it's not up to you. All right, I wasn't even planning on, freaking out about that. But all of it to me with Haynes questionable is that now is the time for Bryce Underwood to take a big step forward. He's not been bad this year. In fact, he's been pretty good. He's been better than I thought he was going to be, although not in the 2 losses. He wasn't all that hot. They need him the most tomorrow without Haynes and a Washington team that's susceptible against the pass. And he's been working with his wideouts. Well, Marsh has emerged. McCulley the week before. This is the game where no more, passes that are rocketing outside, no more screen passes that look like they're thrown 100 miles an hour. It's time for some touch and some footwork and to deliver catchable footballs. It is also time to run the ball yourself and make plays with your legs, be the dual threat quarterback. It's time to be better. And now's the time that he's needed the most. You knew they were, kind of spoon feeding him. That cost him against Oklahoma. Should not have been spoon feeding him there. And now they need to rely on him. So to me, that's the most important thing when I look at the game tomorrow. I say, well, how are they going to do it? It's going to be Underwood. Everything points to that. Michigan needs him. He's in this spot. He starts saying that's why they've got a guy like this. And, I guess the flip side would be, well, he's still a freshman and learning. I mean, that's to me, all that, I know he's a true freshman, but it's the second half of the season. I thought all off season that he was going to be a lot better in the second half than he was in the first half. And that'd be great news because he was pretty good in the first half. Well, this is the start of the second half. So am I saying I expect to see a different Bryce Underwood? How much different? Yeah, I am expecting that. And it's not the coaches. I think they have, quote unquote, turned him loose. I know that's been a popular thing, and it's their own fault because they did not turn him loose during the Oklahoma game. So they've been, they did slow play that a little bit. And then, Biff was like, yeah, we're just opening it all up, turning it over to him. And then, when they lost the game, it was like, let's bring Biff back because he'll just turn them loose. All of that is understandable, those sort of things, even if they're not true. I think if you think about them a little bit, they might be fun to say or just, maybe even mean to say because of the coaches or whatever else. But it's Underwood to me. That's what I see as I look at this game and try to see how Michigan's going to win it. Now, over on the defensive side, I tried to emphasize this Saturday night after the game, Monday when I talked about it, Wednesday when I talked about it. Yeah, they were really bad. Missed a lot of plays, missed a lot of tackles, were out of position, all of that kind of stuff. That doesn't mean that they're a bad defense and the bad units or bad players. They can have a bad game. I'm expecting the defense to rebound, and some of the guys that people were, whether it's looking at a bad Pro Football Focus grade or just looking at tape guys that are like, oh, look at so and so. I'm expecting better play out of all of them. Certainly on that side of the ball, finding a way to get it done. Trying to say, well, it's going to be this guy, going to be. I don't have that for you over on the defensive side, or whatever Wink's going to do. But that's where I sit when it comes down to this game. John sarcastically talking about Washington showing some mercy. I get it. This is where, we're at when it comes down to talking about it. And, with Michigan, there it is. Damon Williams Jr., hopefully that's the guy that Michigan's going to be able to get on the ground. Hopefully that's the guy that they are not chasing around and missing tackles, thinking about it being a long day. Would the season be over if they lost the game yesterday? I'll entertain that for a second. Yes, essentially. I mean, the hope of the playoffs, that's what college football is about now. In years past, I'd say national champ, once the national champ. I don't know how realistic that was. People did it. Playoffs when there was just 4 teams, but when there is 12 teams, that is the goal for a team like Michigan, even with the true freshman quarterback. That was the goal this year, and that will be out the window if they end up on the wrong side. Now, you still watch and you hope for development, especially with the quarterback position, but it's what, you're playing a spoiler role and then you're into the development role. I don't know, you're always interested, but half of the excitement and interest is gone once you're out. And I know technically you're not eliminated with 3 losses, but we can also all be honest about it. And I know a lot of people want honesty when it comes down to the team right now, is that they're never, you should not even be thinking about playoffs, sitting here starting out the second half with how they played on the road. And, I understand how you feel when it comes down to it. All right, let's go. And, the Michigan fans and the bandwagon that's, usually all in and fired up for the team. It's John who's a lone soldier here today. Tough one. And I get it. Now, basketball is tonight and it returns. Good news for Michigan basketball, who ends up in the top 10 in the preseason rankings at number 7, that this is a team that is deep and they got a lot of star power. And this is a nice exhibition game. This isn't, Marathon Oil or, I don't know, Northern Michigan, Wayne State, something like that that's coming in. Those are, I was going to say fine. I mean, they're a different team, a different jersey color. It's basketball. It's fine. This is a Wes Miller team down at Cincinnati. He's a good coach. And I'm not saying like, oh, this is for sure, tournament team or something, but it's a nice team. If they're not top 25, I would say top 50 for sure, but it's a nice exhibition test. And then next week they go on Saturday to Madison Square Garden and take on Rick Pitino's Red Storm. I say it like that because what did they used to be? The Red Hawks? I forget now. Like back in the day, Redmen? Actually, that doesn't sound. Red Storm sounds better. The St. John Johnnies, St. John, I forget. So they changed it. But St. John's is a preseason top 5 team by all accounts. What Pertino was able to do in the portal was fantastic. So you're talking about a legit top 25 team, obviously, at least looked at in the preseason, and you're on the road. A great test. The drawback for the exhibition season is got nothing to do with the Dusty May or Michigan. It's got to do with ponying up cash for the game, because the game is televised. That's the good news. The bad news is it's on the Big Ten Plus, the Big Ten Network Plus, whatever that is. Now, I think it's $13. I'm planning on dropping that myself tonight. You do get this game, you get next week's game, and you might get a Michigan hockey game or two. So if you start dividing it, the key is dropping it. Telling myself, because I'm not very good. See my Peacock bill that just keeps running. That's how they get you. They do a nice job at that. Go ahead. We'll just keep running it back for you every month and pulling that money from you. And if you try to opt out, we'll make it real tough on you. That's kind of the way it works. But so that's the bad news when it comes to a basketball tonight. Now, if you're in the area, you could go to the game. Doesn't sound like a bad option. Might be close to the amount you would pay, for a Big Ten Plus. Thinking about next week's game, hopefully, and I think that's the Michigan State. Hopefully that game's at noon, because the basketball game's at 7 or 8 o'clock. It'd be a nice day if you're Michigan football and basketball fans. Most of you are. And you could take both of those games in. That would be nice. So that's what I'm hoping for. I guess even a 3:30. So no night game. Are they really going to put a night game up at East Lansing? You say, no, they shouldn't. They shouldn't do that, and they probably won't. And so there you go. So that's it. There's your football. And there's the basketball. David says most people are picking Washington to win. I wonder how much is recency bias. Yeah, I think a lot. Oh, Michigan's a 5.5 point favorite. So when we say most people, I don't know how much you look out. Maybe do you look for the ESPN? They've got all of their experts. I mean, they're all going to pick Washington. How much that kind of stuff matters. It was emotionally draining, the game on Saturday night. And the hard part, I think, from a fan standpoint, is that you looked at these guys and say, these guys are pretty good, especially, but then they weren't. So it's tough to get back after that loss and say, oh yeah, they'll be fine. I'm not sure, that they'll be fine, but I do think for this game, just like for Michigan, and I know Indiana went to Oregon and Ohio State went to Washington earlier this year, and they were able to win on the West Coast, but it's true that it's tough to travel the 3 time zones, and it does affect teams. Why it affects Michigan more, I don't know. They played in a lot of Rose Bowls, and I don't know about their preparation. It's tough. It's even tough in the pros. You're a great team, or you want to be a great team, you got to be able to do that. But Michigan has that on their side, whether they can count on it or not. Washington is not only are they heading east, but this is a noon game. This is a 9 a.m. clock for Washington. On the Michigan side, it was a 7:30 game. It was, so you should have been fine with that kind of situation. Time way more difficult for Washington. And when you get as a player, the pride part, the being at home part, and the other part that I mentioned earlier, where the season is over with a loss. Those players all know that any dream of getting to the playoff, any dream of, if you think it's pass, you think it's fail, a lot of people do when it comes to making the postseason, you're eliminated with a loss with still then 5 games to go. It's a big motivational factor. Washington heading east, and Washington, this is not, I think people look and think dual threat quarterback. Michigan, with essentially this same defense, took a mobile quarterback and stuffed him in the bowl game last year in the ReliaQuest Bowl. That's also something I'm thinking. I'm not, hanging my head on that. But when I hear people say, dual threat quarterbacks always kill Michigan, I'm picking Washington. Okay, I mean, if that's the number one thing, if you were, let's take the pick, and then somebody said, oh, that's why. So there's a lot of factors for me, where I think Michigan is bouncing back. And true enough, they might not have Justice Haynes, who is questionable / doubtful, however you want to put it. And they might be missing another, key player on offense. Sure. That can happen. You can see that. But I think that defense, I don't think if there's going to be a difference for me and other people that are just lambasting them and saying I still think that it's a pretty talented team. I know there was a lot of arguments this year, or this week, I should say, that Michigan's just not talented. That, they need to spend money across the board, and, Jim Harbaugh. I'm not buying any of that. Not when you have a transfer portal, and not when they've recruited decently. No, you don't have depth. I don't know if any team with the transfer portal, because if you have a player who doesn't look like he's going to start, or certainly isn't going to be in the 2 deep, they're piecing out and they're going somewhere else where they can play. And I think it's like that with every team in the country. I keep, you look at Indiana a lot this week with Cignetti getting the new contract with the Hoosiers, and everybody said, oh, he's the greatest ever. And it's like, no, not so fast. Remember, Tom Allen was pretty good, and then he sucked. Cignetti was able to bring those players from, the Sun Belt. How great. And, he won in the Sun Belt at James Madison, and he won before that. So, he's got an eye for talent. He's a good coach. I'm not trying to say that he's going to be the next Tom Allen. He looks great to me. That was a great win. He's had a very good, of course, last year at Indiana, making the postseason, and then, winning all the games and then beating Oregon. But when everybody explains it, they're like, oh, well, he just had all of his players from James Madison. Like, James Madison, I'd say it again, how great can all of those players be? And I know, you list them off. They're playing well. If he came from a power 4 and 10 of his players, all these great players, but it's a lot of it's coaching, and then he's been able to go out in the portal and identify and bring the players in. That just gets back to the Michigan part. The talent, Michigan has talent. They have talent on that defense. Now, they didn't play up to their capabilities on Saturday, so it's got people's minds racing, and you're always looking you want to blame something. That Harbaugh left the cupboard bare, that they needed to spend more money in recruiting, or needed to spend more money in the transfer portal. They brought in Damon Payne and Trey Williams as defensive tackles in the transfer portal. They've had Houseman, who was starting for him at linebacker. Barham, they spent a pretty penny on. You go down to Metcalf, who's starting for him. They spent a ton of money. 4 starters. I don't know, Caleb Anderson is coming in and played a little bit, here and there at corner. They didn't go on the cheap in the transfer portal. They spent, and a lot of these guys are playing. And like I said, I think they're going to be okay defensively. I think they have good talent over there. The players are all right. No, they don't have depth like teams used to. That's a product of the portal. Jeff is saying it's reality that young players are going to have ups and downs. Youngest roster in the Big Ten, but we have been very good when we decide to win at home. Yeah, the youngest roster in the Big Ten part. I think about the starters that they have on defense, and really the two deep on defense. Who am I talking about? That's young there. Cole Sullivan, he plays. They've had some corners in the two deep, but Jair Hill was on the championship team. So was Zeke Berry. Those are your starting quarters. Rod Moore's been around the block a bunch of times. They actually get any more veteran than that. So yeah, maybe in the two deep. And I know that was a nice tweet by someone. I don't remember who it was, Jeff, but the defense is not young. Well, offense it was always going to be, and maybe I'm spending too much time on the offense. It was always defense. I mean, it was always the offense that had the question mark. The quarterback was a question mark, true freshman quarterback. The offensive line was a question mark, continues to be. And the receivers, pass catchers, question mark. And they have been pretty much, they're coming along a little bit now. But the tight ends, the pass catchers, mostly because of injuries, they're a question mark. And so now, like, you mentioned the young player, you're relying on Marsh, and you're also relying on McCulley, who might as well be a first-year guy because he's working with a true freshman. Those guys just don't hit the ground and everything, they know where everyone's at because of the inexperience. So there is something to that. Brian knocking Wink. Look, let's gonna see what Wink comes up. If Wink doesn't get the job done tomorrow, then there's no saving the criticism for Wink. They all deserve criticism for last week, but I know I don't ever move on from losses, and I always like talking about Michigan football, but pounding Wink today doesn't feel. I don't feel it. I'm not feeling it. I'm going to wait till tomorrow. Mark is talking about Sig signing for Saban money. Mark also would like, if Michigan wins the coin toss, for them to not defer and start on offense, considering what they have done on opening drives last week. The week before that against Oklahoma, and it's been bad. Against Nebraska. Yeah, again, I'll refer you to Wink. Just hold off. You don't have to. I'm holding off on Wink till tomorrow. Hadley wants to talk about the quarterback for Washington, Damon Williams Jr. He will be the best quarterback Michigan has faced since Oklahoma. Mateer. And here's a more moment. Michigan is 24-0 at home against non-ranked opponents. Let's hope we can make it 25-0. That's a pretty nice stat, Hadley. If Michigan has won 24 in a row against non-ranked opponents, nice stat. Yeah, Mayavo was pretty good last week, so he's a pretty good quarterback. I don't know. I'm talking about but Mateer is Damon Williams. He's more like Mateer. I'll give you that. Than he is Mayava. Mayava, I think, more of a thrower, although he could move. And Mateer is much more as a dual threat, which is, Williams is not the biggest guy, neither is Mateer, so you got that. So I hear the comparison. I am with you. The way I think that things are going to go tomorrow is I think Michigan bounces back in this game. I think they can stack some wins starting this second half by getting this victory tomorrow. When you start talking about how they're going to do it, I think on that defense, I know people don't want to hear that. I can even tell here. I'm not going to say that, Wink is going to, draw up a master. He will be great or whatever else. But I do think that they have talent on that side of the ball, and I think they'll show that. And you say sometimes you hear it, a program win. Hadley's talking about Michigan 24-0 against not good teams or not ranked teams. But, Michigan, when they get embarrassed, when they go from everybody telling them they're the greatest thing ever to snatching that away and saying everybody should be fired and that these guys should lose their scholarships, believe me, it's harsh, but, that kind of comes with the territory there. The program, people like to say culture, but the program's presence over the years, being able to bounce back, being at home, I think those things factor in. And I'm not putting it all on the shoulders of Bryce Underwood, but now he had the 6 games as a true freshman. He's got experience. He's got to be better. He's got to be a better passer. He's got to be a more accurate passer. He's got to throw with more touch. He's got to deliver more catchable footballs, whether that's got to do with his base and his footwork, or they figure out that, like Blackledge said last week, which I didn't like, but it's true, that he's more accurate and throws better on the run. That's not a good sign to me. That gives me Shea Patterson vibes. I remember when Shea Patterson was coming in, I took the off season and watched all these old Miss games. DK Metcalf, is his wide receiver. He had another good wide receiver. I'm forgetting who it was on that team, but I would watch Shea Patterson, and Shea Patterson would run around, and sometimes he would look like Johnny Manziel when he was running around. I'm like, wow, this guy's going to be great, 5-star quarterback. But then I'm just sitting back and watching him when he would stand in the pocket and he would throw the ball. I was like, he can't throw the ball in the pocket. He can't deliver it. Now, I'm not saying that because Bryce has been able to do that. I mean, he's on the seam. He pounded the seam. And, he has a fastball, although he's shown the ability to put some touch on the ball. He's got to just put more of that together, and they're counting on him more than they ever have this year tomorrow with the likely absence of Haynes. So, and even if Haynes is going to go, give it a go. If it is bruised ribs and he's wearing a flak jacket, that could affect, him and his overall production to begin with. And then, he could be, as easily as he could play and give it a go, he could be over there on the sideline after a couple carries. So, again, that puts Underwood more into the spotlight. But I think he's ready for that leadership part where, they need him and to lean on him. Go for it. Like I said, I think they can contain Damon Williams. And one thing, looking at some of the things that Washington does well, they have a good screen game. Michigan did not do well again in the screen game. I know they were worried about the ball going over their heads. And then the screen game killed them partly. I know there's a lot of things that killed them, but the screen game was part of their demise. And Washington's been very good as a screen team. So, I mean, they'll have everybody's Wink will know that, and Wink will have worked on that. and the screen game. Michigan has to have the victory, or the season will feel like a failure at this time, around this time tomorrow. So no big deal. They need the victory. I think they will get it. Michigan 23, Washington 16. So that's my prediction. Let's look at some of the feedback. Jeff is asking how important bump coverage from our corners and Barham to spy the quarterback. Now, if we were sitting here with Jim Scarcelli, he didn't like, as he was a coach, as a spy. Is Barham a good spy? Michigan, to me, don't look like they play any bump coverage. They didn't look like they were playing any bump coverage against USC. They were all 10, 15 yards back. And you're wondering, hey, get up a little closer. So I don't, there's no bump and run that I have seen. They flip the script on Washington and get up in their face. I doubt it. I would think that it would be more like Houseman or Sullivan that would be a spy, and not Barham coming off the edge, unless, you think now that they're going to move him and, they're going to have Guy back at the edge and they're going to put Barham, because I don't think so. I think the likely spy would be Sullivan and not Barham, and they don't play bump and run from what I've seen. John says, don't worry, Dennis, Coach Moore has his work coat on and it's fixed now. Yeah, when I saw that on Monday, when you do gimmicky things and things aren't going well, and you don't have a lot of cachet, you get criticized. And when I saw that Monday, I thought, there's going to be people that are going to criticize him for this. And then I saw a video where they were making fun of him, saying, he's not Harbaugh. The old follow a legend. It's tough to do. Know that. Yeah, things like that. You look silly when you lose and things aren't going well, when you have gimmicks. But if it works, people laugh at you because that's a gimmick. But almost anything that was going to happen there, if he really feels it, I didn't have a big of a problem with it. Harbaugh, for as great as coach as he was, he's a great coach. One of the greatest ever, college pro. He's Mr. Gimmick. He was coming up, and you might not think they're gimmicks, but here's a couple quotes from Rudyard Kipling. He's gonna throw out there. This is what experience he had as he saw his chickens when he was out feeding them, or here's a crack in the sidewalk. He had all kinds of things like that. Say oddities. And so, wearing a shirt it didn't. I get people busted on him right now. It's the same thing with Wink. They will rally up and win this ball game at home like they do a lot down through the years with this program, or the season's over and all the stuff is going to be mild last week than what it's going to be moving forward. Because, okay, it's Michigan State. Michigan State hates their team. And then if Michigan, I'm not going to. I'm going to wait till tomorrow. I'm not playing out the theoretical rest of the season on a Friday when I think that they're going to win tomorrow. I'm going to wait till actually the end of the game. Was it John Ross? I have no idea who John Ross is. So I have to plead ignorance on that. Hadley wants to know what my 3 keys for the game tomorrow would be. Well, let's go to the easy ones. They missed 14 tackles last week. Let's go to tackling. I'm going to put that number 1. Number 2 is I am going to, blocking and tackling are important in every game, and it might get a little cliche-ish, but the offensive line has been the biggest disappointment for Michigan this year. They need a good performance, if not great performance, from those guys. And, you don't flip a switch, but I'm going to put the offensive line. How about specifically pass protection? That's where Washington is susceptible. I'm over here telling everybody that the quarterback needs to take a big step forward in making some plays with his arm and his feet. Well, the pass protection hasn't been pretty good. How about the pass pro from the line as key number 2? Tackling number 1, pass protection number 2, and number 3, I'm going to put Bryce Underwood making plays as the quarterback for Michigan with the most important position, with the top dog on offense, certainly banged up and not at 100%. It might not be playing at all. Tackling, pass protection, and let's go with Underwood as my third one there. SP is talking about unleashing Underwood. He says the O-line needs to be more consistent. He can't get comfortable in the pocket. Long drives will help this team in every way. Yeah, I'm not sure how many long drives. I mean, Jordan Marshall is pretty good back at clipping off 3, 4, 5, 1, 1, 5, 5. So that would be a sustained drive like you're talking about. But it's also a good point that what's going to help Underwood more than anything else is going to be the line giving him an extra beat or 2. So he's going to be able to let the routes develop, and he's not going to have to be running for his life. Thank you, SP. Good job. You're on top of it. LJ wants to see better line play and tackling. There you go. Top 2. Adley. I've seen people pointing out that Rutgers racked it up 493 yards on the Huskies last week and led at the half. So there's that recency bias too. Yeah, I mean, you look at the numbers. I watched Washington play in the first half, and they were up 3-0 almost, until halftime. They're shutting out Ohio State. And I was like, this is surprising to see Washington play this well. Ohio State got a late touchdown, and then they went on to win it, whatever it was, 23-6. Washington's defense looked pretty good. But it was only a half that I watched them, and they were at home. But I know what you're talking about. If Rutgers can move the ball at will against Washington, why can't Michigan at home? A frustrated, wounded, backs against the wall, painted into the corner Michigan team, if they can't move the ball, and the Scarlet Knights did, well, maybe they'll deserve everything. The going to work shirt started with Harbaugh. Yeah. No drop passes. Let's not overdo it. You want them to tackle. You want the line to play better. You want them not to drop any passes. I mean, no, and they did a better job. I don't know, last week. JR back to Wink. Well, Wink trashed the 5-man front. No, I don't think so. It's almost, I know it's a 3-4, but when I watch it, you're going to have Benny, Trey Williams, and let's say Payne as your 3 guys inside, and then they'll have Barham. I don't want to say he's a one-trick pony because he played linebacker, but and more. That's 5 guys. So it almost feels like most of the time I know they flash that. That's the base that they start in. But yeah, they'll pull somebody out. I would think that as just as a general rule, if we were sitting in here, and I know people are really, schematically love to talk about it, but if you can just generate a pass rush with your 3 or 4 guys, then you should not have to send a lot of different blitzes. And yet, the thing now that with defenses is you're you're always sending 4 or 5 guys. And it's just, hey, maybe you'll, back the tackles out. It doesn't sound like a smart thing to do, but they do it. Let's back a tackle out. Let's bring a safety. Let's drop this edge. Let's bring it over here. I mean, and then if certainly every series, if not every play, it's the same thing. Let's throw this combination out there in that guessing game. It seems like all of them do it. So is it Wink? Did he as you looked at the film, JR, or did somebody to tell you as they were watching the film that they counted up that it was too much 5-man front from Wink? Okay, 2 more. Marshall is better. Marshall is better in duo and gap. He's not great at reading the stretch. He misses cutback lanes. Well, I think that sounds like it. There could be some truth to that, Brian. Well, sounds like he got the starters reps because Haynes was resting his whatever's wrong with him this week. So they will. If you see it, Brian, and what you're saying sounds correct to me, well, then won't they change up their running game plan to go with the guy who's going to get the majority of the carries in Marshall? And won't they, if there is truth to that, feature that more? They've got 6 games. They can go back to last year and look at it. Ride Marshall. Let Parker cook. JR says he saw 3 defensive tackles on the field shaking his head. And then he said Webb was talking about it. Well, a lot of things went wrong. I'm laughing because the USC game was frustrating. Nobody really did anything. Marsh, made the big play, but it wasn't a good game from a number of levels. So, yeah, Wink didn't have a very good game. Moore didn't have a very good game. None of the Moores had a very good game. And the fans are having a hard time turning the page, and it's to be expected. Michigan, hopefully they turn the page way earlier this week, and they'll be able to go out there and at least for a day or 2, make you get a little reprieve on going back and, smacking Wink or anybody else around. I happen to think myself, and I'm normally, I don't sit around saying that I'm some kind of, you mentioned Sam Webb. I'm not like a cheerleader. Sam's got his championship rings. He does a good job. He's cheering for Michigan. I'm sure I'm not usually a pom-pom in my hand type guy, but I think that if Michigan wins tomorrow, that I think they're going to beat Michigan State. I think that they're going to win 5 games in a row. And then everyone around here is going to feel a lot different about them and their chances. I'm stumbling around because I'm not ready to make that big. That's what I think. I'm not ready to put myself onto some, island and, plant my flag and declare that I told you they're going to win 5 in a row, because that is not what I'm doing. But I think they're going to win tomorrow. And it does feel like that they could do that. How did this fuse end up right here? Now, why would a fuse be on my broadcast table here? My radio was cutting in and out, and I looked into it and it said, you got to change the fuse. Which I was like, really? Change the fuse? Sounds good to me. So I bought the fuses and I changed them, the ones that they said. And I thought, okay, it's going to be sweet. It's going to fix my car radio. That's nice to have a car. And it didn't work. So I'm on to plan B there. I don't know why this fuse was right here. My dog ate a couple fuses. Well, golden retriever puppy. She's over a year now, but we still call her puppy. But when she ate a few of the fuses, but that's it. That's why that's it right there. That's all I have. All right. A couple programming notes. I'll be on after the Michigan basketball game tonight. So if you like Michigan basketball, if you don't want to pay the absurd Big Ten Plus fee and you want to hear what someone like me has to say about the game, well, it'll be up there all weekend. So check out the Maize and Blue Reviews Michigan basketball postgame live show. I'm going to be on tonight talking about the game. So there's that. And then the same thing tomorrow. But with a home game, I'm going to go to the game and then I'll be on the field afterward tomorrow. So that's it. Everybody have a great weekend. Remember, you look forward to these weekends all year long. There was already people that were like, oh, it's the midway point and acting all sad about it. Well, and then you should very much enjoy tomorrow. And I think it's going to go the right way. So, there's that. Have a great day and come see us over on the Maize and Blue Review. Sign up and subscribe by going to on3.com and then double clicking that Maize and Blue Review button. Have a great day and